Hey everybody, welcome to Difference Makers. My name is Pastor Tyler Warner from Calvary Chapel in Trussville, Alabama. Glad you're able to join us today. We're going to be talking about slowing down, about when it is time to rest. We love to talk about hustling and grinding on this show, but today we're going to talk about when it's important to take a break. But before we get to that, I want to remind you about ironworks.media. This is something we're cooking up over at Calvary Chapel, Trussville. We are trying to build the premier Christian resource network over there. We got a long way to go, but that's what the show is all about, is big goals, chasing down things that you don't know if you'll ever get there, but it's worth the effort. And right now we got a lot of great stuff over there. We've got podcasts like this one, which BGTV is helping us produce. Don't forget to like and comment and subscribe and all that to BGTV Studios, wherever you might be finding this. Even if you're on our channel, go take a look at BGTV. There's a lot of great stuff there. But what we've also got, we've got Bible teaching through many books of the Bible. We've got ebooks that are available. If you join our mailing list, you can download 2 ebooks for free. And we also have some other books that we've published. This is one of them right here, The Desolation of Israel, which is a theology book. This is the most recent one that we've produced, and we've got another one coming up this fall. So by the time you watch it, the new one, which is called Firebrand, will be out pretty soon here, and that's a missionary biography that really can be a life-changing story. I'm very excited to have the blessing to get that out there. So again, you can join the mailing list right away. We've got audio books available. We got conferences that we've done. It's all there on ironworks.media. And if you want to find out more about our ministry, you can go to calvarychapeltrussville.com. The title, as I said today, is Slow Down. It's a slow down sometimes. And as I said, we love to talk on this show. It's all about inspiring and motivating you to live the life that God has called you to live. We believe, 1 Corinthians 7:17, we all have a calling from God. We believe in Ephesians 2:10, we have works prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. We know what the Word says about giving it our all. And so this is our chance really to talk outside of the main church context about the practical aspects of life, gleaning what we can from those that are wise according to our age about how to pursue your life, because if we believe we are doing these things unto the Lord, they ought to be done well. They ought to be done with strong effort. And so when it comes to that hustle and grind mindset, we're very much a part of that in one sense. I think that we've sanctified it a little bit because I think the Bible makes it clear that the Lord delights in it when we give it our all for His sake. The Bible tells us to do everything that you do heartily as unto the Lord. That's actually from the New Testament and the Old Testament that you see that we are supposed to not be lazy, not to be wicked, lazy servants. We're not to be a sluggard, as the book of Proverbs loves to say. We're not to be slothful, and that we are instead to give ourselves fully to the work that God has for us. God created even Adam to work in the garden. Work as we have it today is not a result of the sin, a result of the curse. That came because the Lord created us to work in this world. Now it's miserable and it's hard and it's difficult because of sin, but work is something that can be redeemed, and we see that throughout the Scriptures. So when it comes to taking your life and what God has called you to do, whether that is through your ministry like it is for me, or through your business or your creative endeavors, even your relationships, whatever it might be, even if it's a hobby that you take seriously or sports, that we are given permission and in fact instructed by God to do it with all of our heart. Which is why we can find a lot of overlap from this aspect of things in the world, although there are some things we want to avoid. Most of it is pretty good and can be brought over without changing it. But what can start to happen if we're not careful? If you, like me, tend to read too many leadership, organization, management kind of books, too many motivational, inspirational things, you watch The Last Dance just one too many times, you listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger's famous speech way too many times, a little overdose on your Zig Ziglar, you can start to become critical of taking it slow. You can become critical of those that want to rest or want to take a vacation or want to enjoy their time. And in fact, even as Christians, we can do this. We talk about the Protestant work ethic, which is a famous attitude that the Puritans very much pioneered, which is what we're talking about, that if this world is something given by God to be used for His glory, then we ought to go to it with everything that we've got. Go to it with a will. But if you're not careful, if you get too much of that and not enough of the thing we're going to talk about today, you can start to be resentful of rest. You can start to be suspicious of taking a break. And you can start to restrict yourself so much that you go beyond what God has enabled you to do, and you're no longer getting the sleep that Psalm 127 says that the Lord gives to His beloved. This is where we find ourselves burnt out, as we say. Now, I've heard it said that it's better to burn out than to rust out, and I would agree with that. I'm that kind of person. I am much more likely to wear myself down than I am just to get fat and lazy and not do what I'm supposed to do. But I've also heard it said from good godly men that if you walk in the Spirit and you do things the way that God has taught us to, you won't burn out. And I agree with that. I agree that if you are walking in the Spirit and following the wisdom that God has given us in His Word, which we're going to talk about that some today, you won't burn out, because God never expects His people to go all the way to the edge, at least not all the time. If you love the movie Miracle, I love to talk about that movie, but there's the whole scene where he's got them doing what we called suicides in basketball. I don't know what you call it in hockey, but going back and forth, line to line, back and long after the game is over, and the guys are puking and they're falling out. Now, that's not something you do all the time. That's something he needed to do to make a point and to bring them to the edge so that they could know that they could get there. But you can't live in that place. You can't live on the hustle. You can't live in the grind. That's a good way to set yourself up for failure. So today what we're going to see is not only that God permits us to slow down, but that God expects us to slow down. That God, in fact, commands us to slow down. And while we never want to be those that are lazy, there's a difference between being lazy and being well rested. There's a difference between being foolish and there's a difference between being careful. And that's what we want to be today. So let's talk about this first of all. You know, there's plenty of scriptures I could give you, and I imagine I'll make reference to them, but I just want to think about it like this. When God called the children of Israel, when he brought them out of the land of Egypt and brings them to Mount Sinai, and he gives Moses in the books of Leviticus and Numbers, and of course Deuteronomy repeats it all, of how he wants them to live. When God created a nation and he made its laws and he made its rituals and he made its ceremonies, in fact, God also made the calendar. Leviticus 23 has the feasts of the Lord, the 7 feasts of the Lord that are there. So let's consider this. When God created a nation and he set their calendar, which we've talked not long ago about setting your calendar here. First of all, he gave them 1 day off per week. And that goes all the way back to Genesis, man, that God created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day, he rested. Not because God was tired, but as an example to you and me that about 1/7 of our time ought to be rest. That God never intended us to go wall to wall and spend every minute of every day working, but that he took a rest. And then when it came time to establish his own nation, he mandated that rest. Under pain of death, he said that you are not to work on the 7th day. That was the Sabbath, the Shabbat as it's called, the rest that God gave them, that once a week you were to take a day off. God invented the weekend. Can you believe that? But more than that, not only did they just have a Sabbath at the end of the week, they had what was called the Sabbath year, which was every 7th year was to be a rest. They were to take 1 year off. Are you hearing me? Like, is this in the mic here? Once every 7 years, they would take a year off. It was called the Sabbath year. God said, you're not going to work your fields. You're going to let them lie fallow. And this is not just about crop rotation, but he said, you are going to trust me that I will provide a double portion in year 6 so that you will last through year 7. God had them take a rest for 1 whole year from at least their main responsibilities of work. More than that, every 7th Sabbath year, so every Sabbath of the Sabbath, you'd have the year of Jubilee. Once every 50 years, not only would they take the year off, but there would be celebrations for the whole year. Every debt would be forgiven. Every slave would be set free. Everybody's property would revert to its original owner. It was a complete and total reset. It was a celebration, a Jubilee that God gave his people once, maybe twice in your lifetime. You'd have the chance to experience that. And in fact, it was the failure to observe the Sabbath years and the years of Jubilee that caused the Lord to send Israel into exile, if you can believe that. You know, of course, there was sexual immorality and there was idolatry and all the rest of it, injustice. But what the Lord says to Jeremiah is, because they have not honored my land and my Sabbaths, I'm going to send them into exile for 70 years. Why 70? Because for 490 years they had been in the promised land and they had never observed a Sabbath year, which means they had racked up 70 years of Sabbath debt. So God said, I'm going to give the land 70 years of rest. God took this seriously. More than that, so not just once a week, not just once every 7 years, and then once every 50 years. You had the monthly new moon festivals, where every month they would have a celebration, they would have a feast, they would have a festival. And then you would have the feast, the year-long feast, as I said. You'd have the week of unleavened bread and Passover. You'd have the Feast of Pentecost. You had the Feast of Tabernacles, which was another week-long festival. You had the Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. You had all these special days that God gave them, which included 2 full weeks off every year. What am I trying to show you here? That God gave his people rest. When you're under his authority, you get rest. 1 day a week, a celebration every month, multiple weeks off during the year. We can call those vacations. You had every 7 years, you took the whole year off, and every 50 years, you had a double portion of that. You had a celebration. God gave us these things. He gave Israel these things to give them rest. And Jesus reminds us in the New Testament, of course, that the Sabbath was not intended to be a burden for the people, but a gift to the people. He said the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. God didn't create men to make sure you keep my special days. No, I hear people even to this day teaching that. What Jesus said was it was a blessing for you. Why did God make them do it? Because you know good and well sometimes if you are not made to do something, you won't do it, even if it's good for you. And so the Lord gave them this rest to celebrate Him and for His glory and all the rest. But even that, it was for their own sake. God, biblically, is a fan of rest. He is a fan of holidays. He is a fan of taking it slow sometimes. And just because we live under the new covenant and we are not bound by the restrictions of the law, we still very much ought to learn the lessons of the law, part of which includes that God is a fan of slowing down sometimes. So what does this look like for you and me in our lives? If God cares that much about rest, if the Lord reminds us in the book of Proverbs and throughout the epistles and everywhere else that it is good to take a rest, this means that you need time in your grind set to slow down. You need to slow down. You need to take time to rest, to take a break, small breaks, regular breaks, irregular breaks, big breaks. You need to have them because you can achieve your dream of the thing that you've been working for your whole life, but it can turn into a nightmare if you grind yourself down to where you never even have the chance to enjoy what you have earned for yourself. The classic example of this one is the boat, right, fellas? Guy works real hard, finally gets into a nice house, gets a nice car, everything's all set, buys himself a boat. And what does that boat do? It sits in the garage. It sits in the backyard under its cover, and he stares at it every day, and he goes, man, I really want to go out on that boat. And I am part of the problem. I don't own a motorboat. I have a canoe. Somebody gave me a canoe very graciously. I've been wanting one for a long time, and I've taken out maybe once or twice. It just sits there. Now, what is that representative of? It's representative of gaining luxuries and never taking the time to enjoy them. And often that is because we get ourselves so indebted, we get ourselves so strung out financially that we don't have the ability to take a break. But then what good is the boat to you then? That's the question, right? That's kind of the classic Dave Ramsey thing. Sell the car. You're not even enjoying the car. Sell the boat. Sell that second house. You don't need it. You don't even get a chance to enjoy it. And that's what our dreams can be. You have your dream job. You have your dream marriage, your dream opportunity in the athletic field or in the actor's studio, whatever it could be. And yet because you are so nose to the grindstone all the time, you're not even getting a chance to enjoy the blessings of it all. And maybe you rightly look around at people that all they do is just party all the time. All they do is just go out and be lazy, and they got to the top and now they're slacking off and I'm going to catch them. I understand that mindset. And yet you won't stay at the top very long if you are constantly wearing yourself down. This is what we talk about championship teams. So it's so rare to have a dynasty, so rare to have a repeat or three-peat championships, because not only do you have to be a good enough team and work that much harder and those last-minute shots and the last-minute touchdowns, and that's all great, but you have to do that longer than everybody else. You have to go deeper into the postseason. You get a shorter rest than everybody else, and you do that 2 or 3 times. Man, people are going to be worn out. Injuries are going to start to pile up, and so it is with you, and so it is with me. This means very practically, you need a weekend. You need a weekend. And I'll tell you what, I am the poster child for not taking the weekends. My mother, I just can hear my mom to this day saying this, Tyler, you need a Sabbath. You need a Sabbath. She always would say it like that. And I would say, whatever, Mom, I'm about to go get this bag, I'm about to go plant this church. I'm about to go be somebody. And I still have that attitude, but I also can recognize that she was right, because the Lord is right. That I would come home from working at the church, and then what I would do is I would say, now I have, a pastor's weekend is usually Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Monday. I try to take those 2 together, because if I don't, I'm just going to keep on working. I'll bring work home. I'll bring all my books home to study at the house. I'll take appointments on a certain day. I'll take phone calls on a day, or I'll schedule church events. So now, you had the day off, but did you really? We had our 5K this last week, and it was great. But I was there bright and early, getting things ready, packing stuff up, giving a little sermon, helping everybody get all that stuff set up. And that was fun, and I don't resent that. But I also need to recognize if I do that 6 weeks in a row, I've not really had a day off. And, well, you do need a day off? Apparently God thought that I do, that we do. So don't be taking all your stuff home all the time and just working more on the time when you're supposed to be taking a break from working. It means that you need vacations. Oh, this feels even harder. When you say, I'm going to take a whole week off, I'm going to go take 2 weeks off, I'm going to spend all this money that I've been saving just to go and sit at the beach for a while. Yeah, you need to do that. Maybe you don't need to go off to Gatlinburg and get a cabin or something, but just to stay at the house. just to stay home and to take a rest, because God gave that to his people multiple times a year. And I'll say this, we're at least among the people that I grew up with when I was in Virginia. When I came down to Alabama, I have noticed that people take more vacations here than they did when I was in Virginia. And that used to throw me off, because I'm like, where is everybody over the summer? Everybody, they're always at the lake, they're always down at the beach, they're always traveling, and that's wonderful. That's a good thing that I can commend this place for. And I feel like I have just recently started learning that, hey, if you're not at work, don't work. Find a way to do it during the week. And sometimes you say, well, I got stuff that's got to get done. Well, does it have to get done? Or is it something that can wait 2 days until Monday? I have found that 99% of things that will follow you home from work can wait until Monday. And that might be an initial adjustment you have to make, but once you do, man, there's nothing quite like it. So you need those vacations. You also need seasons of slowdown. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute here, but you need seasons of life that are going to last maybe even a year or two, where we're just going to throttle down, enjoy what we have, consolidate our gains. We've taken some territory, now let's wait. Let's not try to spread out the army so thin. There's a bad general that will do that. You need seasons of that can even last a long time. Maybe you need a year of Jubilee every once in a while. But you know what else you need more than anything else here, real practically? You need evenings. You need time to come home from your job, from your efforts, whatever they are, and just to rest, to Sabbath at your home, even at night. This is something I've heard before, but I have not been able to independently confirm it for myself. But they said that before the invention of electricity and the modern economy where you go to a job, that we are working more now than we did during the days when everybody was a farmer and a hunter, because your work was seasonal. You would work during the planting and the harvesting, and then you would have winter, and you'd have other times where it just would slow down and you'd have more rest, and that's when all your festivals would be, right? And then when we invented electricity, and now you have lights, and now you have companies, and now you're doing work that is more mental and less physical, well, now we're actually working more. So while we say to ourselves, well, we don't want to be lazy, everybody's all lazy today. Statistically, historically, we are working more now than we ever had. And I don't think that's such a good thing, especially if you can't even take the night to be with your family. When you take a rest, you find yourself refreshed. You find yourself energized and ready to go. Haven't you ever hit that moment on a vacation where you spend the 5th day maybe or something and you go, oh man, I feel good. You know what? I'm actually kind of excited to get back to work. I have those when I travel. And I'm not talking about you're stressed because stuff's piling up on your desk. You're like, I'm just ready to get back to the routine. I enjoy it. I built it for myself. I just needed some time to get re-energized. And somebody told me one time a real vacation is when you get through the first stress of wanting to get back and you push through it, and then you can actually relax. I know we've all been on those vacations where you finally get a chance to really exhale a little bit and it's already time to pack up the cars and go home. That's not so good. But not only are you going to feel energized, you need to find some time to enjoy some of what you have earned. As we talk about the boat, right? Are you actually getting a chance to get out on the boat? Are you getting a chance to come home and watch that NFL Sunday ticket that you finally paid for because you finally got the money for it? Are you actually seeing those children or that wife? When's the last time you took your wife out to a dinner or something that you both enjoyed? Now I recognize that some people are lazy. It's true. You shouldn't be lazy. But if you are like me, then you tend to work too much. You tend to turn even your play into work. You tend to turn even your time when you should be doing nothing into, well, how can we use this time more productively? I, at this point in my life, have learned that lesson, and now it's time for me to rescale things. And that's a whole other subject I could talk about. Maybe it'll be another podcast, is you need to sometimes adjust the scale and scope of your life. If you're only thinking from week to week, like, I've got to get these things done this week, maybe it's time to back off and say, what are we going to get done in this year? Because then you can take a few days where, you know what, if I miss a day here, that's not going to ruin anything. But if you micromanage it so much down to the smallest minute level detail, then you can start to get in some trouble. Let me tell you a little bit about what's going on in my life and in my ministry in this regard. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about when I say we need to slow down sometimes. Calvary Chapel Trustville is in what I'm calling a season of slowdown right now. Remember I said that? You got weekends, you got vacations. Sometimes you have long seasons of slowdown. When we moved here, I came down to Alabama in 2018, 7 years ago. This last Sunday at the time of recording was our 7-year anniversary as a church, which is pretty cool. That's how long the tribulation is going to be. So kind of thinking about that, it's actually pretty long. It's kind of horrifying to think about. But in any case, been 7 years. When I first came down, we needed to hustle and grind, man. We were meeting in the hotel. I was driving the junk truck. We found our own building eventually. We needed to get into that, and then we needed to get that redone, and we needed to get on the radio, and I needed to edit all of the programs, and then we had COVID, and that was tough, and we were barely starting to get, our feet under us, and then finally I get salaried, and so those early days, yeah, it was hard work all the time. I mean, working up till 3, 4 in the morning, finishing my Bible studies for Sunday mornings. That's what it was. I did everything that was needed to do, and I'm very proud of that. And I know that the Lord has approved of that. Well, once we kind of got everything underneath us and the church was established and we had our own spot and I was able to hire an assistant to come and work with me there, and it's been great. Once the church was planted, we kind of reached a point where we said, this is not a church plant anymore. This is just a plain old church. Glory to God. That's success. You know what I mean? But we need to start looking around and say, okay, we want the church to grow, and I am not a big fan of these crazy church growth methods that really feel very carnal. But here's what you can do. You still want the church to grow, but you can look around and say, is there anything here that would hinder somebody from sticking around? And that's what we did for a couple years. We looked around and we said, all right, the worship team is good, but we need to increase the talent level of the team. We need to get more organized with the services. We need to have some more instruction on how to lead. We can do up the stage a little bit so it's more impressive to look at when you walk in the room. And the cameras, we're doing online ministry. The cameras need to be better. The sound team can be trained. And so we took a long season and invested in what I called the sanctuary side of worship, making Sunday and Wednesday as great as we could. That was a lot of work to do that. And then we finally reached that point. The next thing was, what about our online presence? Well, that really needs some attention. And now that I've got an employee, we can make that happen. So we put a lot of time and attention into YouTube, into podcasting and everything else like that, live streams. It was great. And we went around children's ministry, same thing. Our outreach programs and missions, same things. Just the appearance of the church inside, is it clean? Or is everything the way it needs to be? We added an extra wing to the church, kind of took a step of faith, and the Lord provided right away so that it was a little more comfortable being in there. The volunteers that we looked at, and we're still working on some of these things, but we reached a point where, okay, that's been a long season of hustling and getting it right. But after a certain point, you reach what you call diminishing returns, meaning I can put the same amount of effort into this week as I would have in 2018, but I'm not going to get the same kind of result out of those hours as I would back then. The reason being because the church has been more established and there's just simply less to do. It's succeeding, which is a good thing. And as we looked around, I noticed, all right, what is the next big thing that we could do to really enable this ministry to succeed? Meaning, in our efforts, it's all in the hands of the Lord. He's the one that adds and takes away, and I understand all of that. But what's the best thing we can do for this congregation to help it grow right now? Well, we needed to get a new building. We needed to get a new space to meet in. And the Lord provided that for us. And that was a big hustle and grind and getting that ready too. But now we're at the stage where everything is approved and we're just in the construction process. And at the time of recording, it's probably going to be about 18, maximum, hopefully about 24 months. That's 1.5 to 2 years until we are in that building. And that will be its own new season of hustle and grind once we get in there. But what this means, we had a couple big events at the beginning of the year where we put a ton of effort into getting them ready. We did a conference, we did a vacation Bible school, lots of stuff, and they were great events. But what we realized was all of that time and all that effort that we were putting towards those things was not going to be the magic bullet that was going to finally fix it. It's going to finally slay that beast and turn everything around, and we're going to be good to go. And so what I've announced to the staff, which is just me and another guy, and to the congregation as well, is this is now a season of slowdown. Because the next thing that we could meaningfully do in order to promote and build up this ministry is already in process, but it's going to take about 18 to 24 months. And there's not a whole lot for us to do. I'm not the one hammering the nails. We got somebody doing that for us. So I determined that we are going to enjoy this season of slowdown. We're going to enjoy it. We have the opportunity of about 1.5 to 2 years, hopefully less than that, where there's not so much required of us in terms of hustling and grinding and getting it done. There's lots of important things that we need to do, but it's the regular things. It's the routine of ministry, which means we have the opportunity to slow down and enjoy this process, or we can stay frantic for 18 to 24 months when it's really not going to help us that much, only to get into a season where we're going to need to ramp it up, and then where are we supposed to go from there when we're already burned out? So we have determined to take our time, to slow down. We're not going to fill up the calendar with events just to have events for their own sake. We're not going to be working, wall to wall every single week to make sure that we're filling the time. It's like, do what needs to be done, do a little extra, and then if there's some time, man, just take the time. And I am delighted by this. And we're actually starting to implement this church-wide, enabling our church members to be, I don't want it that if you're a member at Calvary Chapel, Trussville, that in order to be a fully involved member, you got to be here 5 nights a week. Why would I want to do that? The Lord doesn't even do that to us. The Lord delights in giving us rest. And so we are entering into a season of slowdown as a church. And you know what? Something may change where we got to turn it on again. And I am ready for that. But what has happened is we are reaping the fruits of years of labor, 7 years of labor, to where now we are able to slow down, catch our breath, breathe, and say, it's going to be all right. The next thing is going to take a little time. And I would say that for you, you need to look for those opportunities in your life too. The Bible warns us about not entering into the rest that God has for us. And that's talking about salvation. But the Lord also wants you to get good rest in your life. You need to stop striving and slow down sometimes, my friends. This has been Difference Makers. My name is Pastor Tyler Warner from Calvary Chapel in Trussville, Alabama. I hope that you will visit us at ironworks.media, where you can find our other podcasts, the verse-by-verse teaching that we've got there. We've got books available, like the new one, The Desolation of Israel. Firebrand will be coming out this November. You don't want to miss that. If you're watching this in November or after, why don't you go ahead and pick it up right away. If you join our mailing list, you can download 2 free ebooks right away that have been written by me. I know you'll enjoy those. And if you want to find out more information about the church I pastor, you can go to calvarychapeltrussville.com. God bless you all. Slow down sometimes so that you can get out there and make a difference.